if I told you that a 4th century debate about the nature of Christ could help you understand why modern political movements rise and fall, and that studying medieval Islamic scholarship might actually make you better at analyzing contemporary foreign policy? I'm not talking about some abstract academic exercise. I'm talking about wisdom traditions that have shaped literally everything about how we organize society, exercise power, and to make meaning of our lives. Hi, I'm Ben, and welcome to Wisdom Traditions. I'm currently a graduate student studying theology, but my path here started with politics and history. And that interdisciplinary journey has completely changed how I see both the ancient world and our modern moment. If you're someone who loves learning about the big ideas, who wonders about how the past connects to the present, or who's curious about the deep intellectual traditions that still influence our world today, then you're in exactly the right place. On this channel, we're going to explore the rich intellectual traditions of theology, political thought, and history, not as dusty academic subjects, but as living wisdom that speaks directly to the questions that we're wrestling with right now. Today, I want to share my own story of how I ended up studying theology and why these ancient conversations matter more than ever, and what we're going to explore together in the videos ahead. But first, let me ask you this. When was the last time someone showed you how a theological debate from 1500 years ago could illuminate a contemporary political crisis? That's exactly the kind of connection we're going to make throughout this series. But to understand why I'm so passionate about these connections, I need to tell you how I got here. And it definitely wasn't a straight line. So I started college as a political science major because I was fascinated with power, how it works, who gets it, how it shapes society. I was the kind of question who was asking, why are some political movements successful? What makes leadership legitimate? How does a society decide what's just? Here's what I discovered. You can't really understand contemporary politics without understanding history. Every new political strategy has been tried before. Every crisis has historical precedents. So I added history as a second major, diving deep into everything from ancient Rome to modern revolutions. And that's where something very unexpected happened. The more I studied political history, the more I kept running into theology. So think about it. You can't understand the American founding without Protestant theology. You can't grasp medieval political theory without Islamic scholarship. You can't analyze modern human rights without tracing their roots through Christian natural law theory. I actually remember the exact moment that this kind of clicked for me. I was researching the influence of St. Augustine's City of God. I was thinking about medieval political theory, and I realized, well, this isn't really a historical curiosity. These theological arguments about nature of authority, the relationship between sacred and secular, the meaning of justice, this same debate is happening today. So the language has changed, but the fundamental questions remain. What makes authority legitimate? How do we balance individual freedom with collective responsibility? What's the relationship between moral truth and political power? That realization led me to graduate school. So I'm attending St. Mary's Ecumenical Institute, where I'm not necessarily abandoning political science and history. What I've learned is that theology isn't separate from political and historical study. Frequently, it's actually the foundation underneath all of it. So when I study early Christian debates about economic justice, I'm not just doing ancient history. I'm exploring the intellectual roots of the contemporary discussions about wealth inequality. And when I'm analyzing medieval Islamic political philosophy, I'm not just studying the past, I'm understanding a framework that still shapes some of our geopolitics today. Now, what you might be thinking, this sounds fascinating, Ben, but why should I care about medieval theology? Dealing with modern issues. So here's why. Every major debate in contemporary times about democracy, human rights, economic justice, the role of religion in public life, even artificial intelligence ethics, these debates are shaped by theological and philosophical traditions that go back centuries. So let me give you 3 concrete examples. First, the current debate about democracy and authoritarianism. Well, St. Augustine's City of God laid out arguments about the legitimate authority that directly influenced the founding fathers. The same tensions play out every election cycle in the US. Right? Second, modern human rights theory, it's built on a foundation of medieval Islamic scholarship that was thinking about natural law, and then Christian theology is laying out some guidelines for human dignity. Understanding those roots helps us see why human rights discourse works exactly how it does and why sometimes it fails. The relationship between technology and society, right? Medieval Christians and Islamic thinkers were thinking about how human knowledge and power should be used. What is wisdom? What is cleverness? How should communities govern technological change? Sounds pretty familiar, right? So this is not coincidence. It's continuity. The same fundamental questions that drove theological inquiry in the past are still driving some of our most important conversations today. The difference is that most people don't realize that they're engaging with theology when they debate politics, ethics, or social policy. So what studying these traditions teaches us is pattern recognition. You start to see how certain ideas about justice, authority, community, and meaning play out across different contexts and different time periods. So you develop what I would call historical wisdom, which is the ability to recognize when something that is new is really just a new variation of an ancient issue. So here's a really exciting thing. Once you learn the pattern, you can learn from previous generations how they handled similar challenges. You can draw on centuries of accumulated wisdom instead of trying to reinvent something from scratch every time there's an issue requiring a solution. So here's what's coming next. So what is this channel actually about, right? It's connecting ancient wisdom to contemporary questions. We're going to explore how theological, political, and historical traditions speak to the issues that we're facing right now. Here's what you can expect. Every week, I will work to release a new video exploring a different aspect of these wisdom traditions. Sometimes we'll dive deep into a specific thinker, like how Thomas Aquinas' political theory influences modern Catholic social teaching. Sometimes we might trace an idea across time, how the concepts of just war evolved from St. Augustine's Islamic scholarship, or the way that we connect to contemporary law. In our next few videos, I really want to start with some fundamental questions that I think are critical to building a longer timeline piece, right? What ancient Christians can tell us about economic inequality, exploring how early church fathers like John Chrysostom developed frameworks for thinking about wealth and justice that are incredibly relevant to the contemporary debates. And I'm thinking a future topic I'd really like to touch is why medieval Islamic scholars mattered to modern democracy, which I think they're still influencing a lot of Western democracies in ways that we're not really realizing. But I would also like to talk about the theological roots of human dignity and how our modern understanding of human dignity emerged from centuries of theological and philosophical debates. So here's what I would like this channel to be really more than anything. It's a conversation. I'm not just going to lecture to you about ancient texts. I'd really like to explore together how the traditions speak to the questions that you're wrestling with as a viewer, and maybe something that I'm wrestling with as well. So tell me in the comments. Tell me what connections you're seeing. Ask questions about these ideas. Apply it to your own situations. Please challenge me when you disagree, right? Share your insights. The best learning happens in a community, and I want this channel to be a place where we can think through these big questions together. It's like Thomas Aquinas said, right? The most excellent counter argument to a belief is what's worth defending against, right? So please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our weekly deep dives. And here's your first assignment. In the comments below, tell me about a contemporary issue you're curious about. Something political, social, ethical, whatever you want, and I will try to show you the historical and theological traditions that directly connect to it. This is how we're going to build this community of learners together. Look, I know it might seem strange to turn to ancient theologians and medieval scholars when you're trying to understand our rapidly changing world. Here's what I've learned. The questions that matter are perennial. How do we live well? How do we organize societies? How do we balance individual freedom with collective responsibility? What makes life meaningful? These traditions, we've been wrestling with these kind of questions for centuries, and they have developed very profound insights that we ignore at our own peril. So join me on this journey, and let's explore together how the wisdom of the past can illuminate the challenges of the present, because understanding where we've been is the key to figuring out where we're going. I'm Ben, and this is Wisdom Traditions. I'll see you next week when we dive into what those early Christian voices can teach us all about economic justice in the 21st century. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and remember, the conversation between past and present never ends. Thank you.